Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 995 of our daily content grind. We are getting so close to 4 digits, it's kind of incredible. Let's hope I don't lose my mind in the last few days, it's entirely possible. But for today, we are going to continue with something that a friend of mine has been doing over on Twitter that has kind of inspired the idea for the video today. So, this photo you see, this lovely spread of custom toys, is by my buddy Grimlockamus, or Chrome Tyranno over on Twitter. He's been doing something of a Dawn of Futures Past inspired set of repaints using a lot of modern molds to create the Beast Wars cast, which is always a fun idea. And Dawn of Futures Past is one of the most genius BotCon box sets there is, which explains why it's one of the most expensive BotCon box sets there is. I'm never going to own one. I'm sad. However, Hasbro has shown in recent years they're willing to actually make modern versions of BotCon toys. Despite what any agreement was in the past about exclusivity, none of that seems to apply anymore. If it's a way of reusing a mold, yeah, they're going to go ahead and do it. So that just kind of leaves me wondering, with all of these capsule lines being done, you know, your Buzzworthies, your Toxatrons, your Wreckers, where is this? With one of the most successful BotCon ideas ever, where's our new Dawn of Futures Past? So I'm going to kind of take what he has done and kind of go with my own ideas for exactly how to put that together. So, for starters, I'm not going to use any of the molds he's using. I'm going to go with my own ideas on this one. And we're going to start with a box set. We're going to start from the ground up, which means we're going to start with Rat Trap. So, I kind of want to stick to some of the alt mode inspirations here, just to kind of homage that set. I will admit, a motorcycle never really seemed to suit Rat Trap as well as I think it should. I don't know, like rats are not particularly fast like a motorcycle tends to be. So it's really just like he's small. So that's what his alt mode is. But we can play with it. There is a mold that we can do this with. And if we want to keep all the cast members kind of in scale with each other, then we have an Iguanus mold just kind of sitting there waiting for use. So the reason I would like this, now there is some retooling to be done here, but some of the more animalistic parts can actually be repainted to resemble Rat Trap's original toy, which I think would be a pretty clever way of reusing the sculpting. But also, there are little elements like the wheels over the shoulders, kind of throwing back to Rat Trap's Transmetal phase. Also, you have the wheel, you have the seat of this motorcycle that's intentionally designed to look like a tail. You could color that to look like the original Rat Trap's tail and throw an homage to his original toy in at the same time. I didn't really want to use a core class because I think it's a little bit too small. Like, core class Rat Trap to me is like a little bit off in the Kingdom line compared to everybody else. I think it's just too small. But in this case, there's some really strong homage elements that you could get out of this that I would really like to see and I think are kind of clever. So I think I will make an exception with this. I think that would work. Yeah. Also, I couldn't really think of like a small size. I almost wanted to do like Bumblebee Brawn, because in this scenario, all of these futuristic Cybertronian designs from every line is on the table. So I almost did like Studio Series Brawn because he's a very small deluxe, but it's a little bit too like buff to make sense for Rat Trap. Moving on, we have to go to the next Scott McNeil character in the line, and that's going to be Dinobot. Let's admit, the whole reason why this toy exists is because the hoist head actually looks like Dinobot's head. So that was pretty much why the mold got chosen. But I don't like the excavator for Dinobot. Aside from just like the arm is super weird, it seems to kind of go against some of his like ideals. Like I don't think, like, he doesn't seem like he'd be much of a skilled warrior when he has a gigantic shovel for an arm, So instead, I like the idea that Beast Wars, oh god, now I'm gonna remember, I kept looking it up, Uprising. I just kept looking it up and then I blanked on the name. Beast Wars Uprising decided to use the Springer mold, and we have a brand new one on the way for that. So the triple changer thing doesn't really apply much here to a Dinobot. My imaginings would be that, the triple changer aspect would be subdued. You make like his canonical form would be like the car, but the helicopter is still there. You just don't really like put it out there. But other than that, comes with a sword, has the right stance. He'd be taller than a lot of the characters in this because Dinobot is a very tall character. And it just overall fits. It overall fits. Not only like the connection, like the warrior connections between the characters, but just like the body type works for Dinobot. And we and of course, because of Beast Wars Uprising, we've seen the custom done before. So this is absolutely something that they could do now. Also, the hammer, thanks to the Code of Hero episode, the hammer makes more sense for Dinobot than it does for Springer. Just saying. Next up on my list is another one that feels kind of forced in due to circumstances beyond control for BotCon. It is Rhinox. I've never really liked this toy as Rhinox because the head kind of fits, but in the vehicle mode kind of fits for the Rhino, but it's not all that Cybertronian, and like part of it works, but part of it really doesn't. I feel like this one kind of goes the farthest, especially, the only part where it works is if you try to imagine it as the toy. If you're looking at the original Rhinox toy, those big shovels are actually the shell hanging off of him. And of course, he does have colors closer to the toy than the cartoon model. Okay, I can see that. But that's not what we want. We want one that looks the way that we imagine it, that we remember. So for a new version, we have Gamer Edition Optimus Prime, who has that big, wide shoulder stance, that really bulky body that we know Rhinox for. This, I think, could get a lot closer than the Cybertron landmine mold. Also, yeah, he looks like he's got a vehicle mode just made to ram into things. You'd have to retool the chest, which is the only thing. But again, we're going to retool the head, so might as well retool the chest as well. And yeah, you don't even need to remove the Matrix. Like, the Matrix can just be this thing you just leave unpainted inside and just clip the new chest onto his hinges as one piece. Done. But yeah, this mold I think would be great. I think this would make a perfect Rhinox. It wouldn't surprise me if Grim Locamus had this mold in mind to actually do his version. I'm kind of eager to see how his Rhinox fills out that maximal team that we saw at the beginning. Moving on from there, we need to continue this box set, and this goes to Cheetor. And Cheetor, I will admit, I'm spoiled for choice, but none of them feel great. The Clocker mold kind of works, but I think it's too small. I don't think it fits his size appropriately, especially when you have to redo it into Tigatron. So it's got to be deluxe. There's no loss of deluxe cars, but for me, if I'm going to do Cheetor, I want him to be the fastest car I can pick, because Cheetor was all about how fast he was. In that sense, I've gone with Mirage and his Cybertronian take on an F1 car. I do this for two reasons. Number one, because I like his body shape overall. There's not as much of like a big car front, like making him a little bit wider. I like how he curves down. That feels more Cheetor to me. But also, what I like about picking Mirage is that it kind of throws a small homage to Cheetor's Trans-Tech design, which was something of a F1 car in shape. That little nod, I think, pushes this over the edge for me and makes it a really nice pick. I think it's a fun pick for Cheetor. Admittedly, it doesn't work as well for Tigatron, but I also don't think Clocker works well for Tigatron. If Cheetor is a little bit too small proportionally for his set, Tigatron is way, way too small for his set. I would have loved to have picked something that was like a large size deluxe, with a vehicle mode similar to Cheetor's. I couldn't quite find that though. I couldn't find like a right balance between, like, they look very similar, but one's a little bit larger, even if I go all the way back to Siege. So I'm sorry, Tigatron, you're going to be an Indy car. It's not quite your style, I admit, but best I can do. Optimus Primal is another interesting one. I didn't want to just pick an Optimus Prime. And I will admit, the Skyquake mold looks good, the way Grimlockamus did it, but I don't like Primal as a jet. There's something about that that doesn't seem right, even with the character's history of flight. So in order to get this one right, and obviously we're not going to come close to the original toy. We're not going to come close to this because there's nothing that looks like Crumple Zone. So I'm going to go with something a little bit weird. It's going to seem very odd, but I'm going to pick Tarn. Hear me out. Because as tank formers go, Tarn actually is kind of thin. So I think proportionally it can work for Primal. What makes it work for me is that we know the chest can easily be retooled because, well, no, I don't think chest. Now I'm going to take that back. I do think the chest could be retooled to look more like Primal. I was going to say because Bludgeons was, but it's not. It's just cleverly repainted. What gets me is, number one, he does have a wide shoulder armor look, which is something Primal, I think, needs. I think that's actually really important to his silhouette. So if the treads were done in black to match Primal's normal colors, I think this would actually come close to working. The other thing that gets me, his fusion cannons can mount over his shoulders. So there is Primal's shoulder rockets. So you have that aspect of the silhouette as well. That's what makes me think Primal when I look at this mold, where I think it would work as Primal. Maybe the tank is a little extreme for Optimus Primal, but then again, look at the massive rocket launchers that Crumple Zone has in his vehicle mode. Again, I think I'm justified in that choice. So moving on from there, we've done the box set now. So now we just need to look at the other toys that came out. So we're going to start with Waspinator. And I've said my piece on this for a long time. I don't like Waspinator as a jet. I don't think a wasp turning into a jet makes sense. Because it's not the same, it's not the correct method of flight. Because it's not like bird wings, it's more like helicopter blades. And that brings me to Spinister. Admittedly, I think this one doesn't get as Cybertronian as it could, but it is a siege toy, so technically, yes, it is more futuristic in design. It can work for that. I also think that just to do the legs with the translucent yellow, to kind of invoke the yellow on Waspinator's legs, would actually make this work really good, and I think it'd end up looking cool in vehicle mode as well. And then the only thing you need for like the rear of the bee is for like the tail to actually be yellow and black striped. So this one would work. This one would work for me. That said, there is also a plan B. There is a second option that I think is hilarious and genius, but you probably wouldn't because it's not what you would expect out of this line. I don't think it would ultimately fit the style of the line. You make him 6-gun. Because hear me out, because the 3-part chest kind of matches how like his torso in Beast Wars was in 3 pieces, so that kind of works for that. But also, yeah, also like the VTOL kind of aerial mode, I think that would work for a bee as well. I think that would work for a wasp as well. It's the fact that you can disassemble him. It's the fact that you can separate him into just a pile of robot parts. It would be hysterical. I don't know which is better. I think... Can we do both? Be so good. Let's move on to Megatron. And I will admit, I'm copping out on Megatron a little bit because my options for leader class toys is very limited, and Megatron does have to be a leader class. He is the largest in the original Beast Wars cast. So for him, I have to go with a leader class. That leaves me to Double Dealer, which does have an homage to his original BotCon form. So there is that. It does have this big wide look. You do have the rockets, which can be like arm cannons to kind of resemble like normal Megatron stuff. It's that Condor mode that gets a little bit iffy. So the idea for me would be to either remove the wings completely, because those are the only purple parts on the toy. You could get away with that. And then just mold in a new head and a few extra details to actually make him look kind of T-Rex in that mode. Or you remold the wings and remold the head and make him look like a dragon to kind of throw to his Transmetal 2 form that he would eventually get. Either option would work. Either one. I'm not going to excuse myself. I'm just low on options for this one. I could have done like the concept leader Megatron, but I'm not huge on that mold because it's just, all of its modes feel a little bit jank. And if I'm going to make him a triple changer, I'm at least going to work a triple changer in that can homage some other aspect of Beast Wars Megatron. So let's see, who is next on this list? Okay, so the last one we really got to do here, because it was an extra for the year, was Buzzsaw and Laserbeak, which was a two-pack you could get. Kind of taking inspiration from the way Ravage was used in Beast Wars, as like, here he is now, new, fresh, upgraded. So that one also plays well. So we need to pick another one, and I guess this one is pretty obvious. I want to use the core Air Razor mold. Yes, it puts some organic details in on this whole thing, but at the same time, these are kind of AU depictions of Laserbeak and Buzzsaw, so I can get away with it. Needless to say, it does match the original toys. It is a very, very good set of toys. This is also a little bit smaller than your standard deluxe, so I think proportionally it would also make sense to use for those two. It's just a good toy I want more uses of, okay? If I'm not going to get Energon Dive Bomb out of this mold, let me at least have BotCon, Laserbeak, and Buzzsaw, right? Give me something here. I'm choking for this mold to get used again. Okay, so if we're looking at just the BotCon set itself, that is the limit. That is the entire list and what molds I would use to recreate it. However, FunPub actually went and expanded on this. Of course they did, because it's one of the most successful sets they've ever done. So they're going to give you a few more via Beast Wars Uprising, as well as just the Dawn of Futures Past fiction as well. I'm not going to do all of them, because I will admit some of them stumped me to the point where I could not figure it out. Air Razor, for instance, we have a severe lack of deluxe-sized jets to pick from. And like literally the only option I would have would be like Needle Nose, who would actually make a better Terrorsaur, because technically Terrorsaur and Needle Nose have kind of sort of shared a mold already. So that would kind of work as a weird homage thing, but it is a very Earth jet, so it doesn't really work with the Cybertronian theme. I wanted to try real hard to keep to that. So we had to come up with other things. So I'm going to do a few. Just to fill out some ranks. Not all of them, but just a few fun ones I thought up. One of them was Scorponok, and I thought this one was the most disappointing one that they did. Reusing Scamper for the mold just felt like, they're just doing it just because, like, whatever mold, just so we can say we finished that cast. Lame. It's very lame. Granted, I don't know if I can think of a better one, because it is hard to find a deluxe class vehicle that actually looks like a Scorpion in some way, without it just being a Scorpion toy. But I do like the idea of using the Bumblebee version of Ratchet or Ironhide. One, because it does have that front windshield that's segmented and gives me that impression of like something insectoid or arachnid to its eyes. That kind of draws me to it. It has the wider shoulder stance that I want out of Scorponok, so that kind of drives me to it. What I really like about this is that it's on the small side for a deluxe, and Scorponok actually is on the small side if you look at the group shot of the Beast Wars cast. So he needs to be a small stack deluxe like this one. This is another one. I almost used Brawn instead, and I think Brawn would make a better Scorponok than like the Rat Trap that I almost thought of. But ultimately, it's the wide shoulder part. That's what kind of draws me to this one for Scorponok. Another one I really didn't like was Tarantulas. Tarantulas should not be this big, heavy ATV, APC rather. It just doesn't suit him. It's too big, it's too bulky. I don't even care if he uses his better colors from his Transmetal body. It ain't good. It does not work. You can't even get by on like Oh, but like, they're going with like the multi-leg thing with the vehicle mode. He's missing 2 wheels for that. Stop it. No, I like the things that would homage his transmetal mode with like actually being a motorcycle. They did that once with a Junkion. Didn't look great, but hey, they tried. But nowadays we have this Prowl, which I think because of the animated aesthetic just barely gets away with looking futuristic enough to be a Cybertronian motorcycle. There are other options here, but again, they tend to be a little bit more feminine in design. It would require a lot more work to make it look more like Tarantulas. Like Bumblebee RC comes to mind. So this one gets the size right. This one gets the size correct. And I think it works well enough. I also kind of like how like the back fins on this Prowl mold also kind of gives you that idea of like that's where his bug legs go. That's how his bug legs fold up onto his back. I kind of get away with that a little bit there. Here's the one I thought was inspired. I'm going to end off on this one because I thought this was genius. So here we have Protoform X, the future Rampage. Using the deluxe version of Prime Megatron, and I never liked the idea that he was just a deluxe. That seems so small for Rampage, who's supposed to be kind of gigantic. So I wanted to get close to this. But give him more size, at least bump him up to a Voyager class. And then this struck me. It gets the size in there. You could retool that upper body and the head to actually get Rampage out of this mold. But I love the fact that the vehicle mode not only homages his Fun Pub toy, but also kind of has this crab shell look to it, and even has this like the beginnings of what are going to be Rampage's claws in beast mode at the front of the vehicle. I know this is not the most popular mold, but that's because, you don't know, like it's just a weird vehicle for Soundwave to turn into. But if that's how Protoform X kind of looked, I think you could get away with it here. So that would be my pick. I think that would actually be kind of great. And that's the last one I got for you. A lot of the other ones tripped me up a little bit too much. Some of these even tripped me up trying to like balance out the entire team. But given how successful and popular this whole concept was, I think it's a waste for Hasbro to have so many Cybertronian modes lying around and not eventually do this. I would love for them to revisit the idea with modern molds. And this is just an idea. Obviously, Grimlockamus has ideas of his own. These have been mine. You will have yours that you're free to share in the comments below. But you go ahead and do that. As usual, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.